have, I know, a number of guests with us here tonight, people that are not members of the association or are not usual attendees. So if the folks that are guests and friends of ours are here, if all of you all would just stand. We won't ask you to identify yourself, but people who are not part of the association, if you'd stand, let us recognize you. Good, thank you very much. Give us a second. Are there any urgent or important announcements that people would like to make this evening before we start our program? Okay. I want to thank again the volunteers that worked out at the table and greeted people, and the folks that are doing the petition gathering here as well. All of the volunteers who work together to make a meeting like this happen. You could have 10 people or you could have 1,000 people. And generally it takes about the same amount of effort to put on either meeting. It doesn't make much difference how many are there. So it takes a good bit of work to coordinate things, and certainly the people here sitting up front have put in a lot of work for their efforts as well. I think you're going to hear something more in just a moment about the table over here, but we'll leave that for a few minutes from now. I'm going to call on Charles to begin our program. As you all know, Charles has been the Register of Deeds in Wake County until the last election. He is a very good man. He's a member of our board, and we're glad to have him serving as the moderator for our program this evening. So we'll go ahead and introduce Charles and let you get started with the program. We thank you again for being here. We hope you enjoy the program. We hope that we're able to educate people and get the word out about this very important issue for the city of Raleigh and the citizens, the taxpayers of the city of Raleigh.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. I'm Charles Gillum, and I'm going to be the moderator for tonight. I personally am undecided on the question of whether a recall election is a good idea, and the Wake County Taxpayers Association is also undecided and neutral on this question. But we thought it would be good to have a forum on it, because we figured that most people are probably unaware that there's no election coming up this year at the appointed time. They'll start to notice next month and the next month when they don't see signs up in Raleigh. And so we will, people will start to learn about this. But we thought it would be a good idea to educate people on the issues, pro and con, as to whether there should be an election by petition. Now, the situation is that the election for this year was called off, and it will be held in November 2022. However, there is a provision in the charter for the city that allows the people to call an election by petition. And a group of people, and we have some of them over here on my right hand, have started a petition to have an election nonetheless. What we're going to do is, these people are going to do a introductory statement. Then, if there's anybody here against having the election, they get to do an introductory statement. Now, we invited everybody we could think of to come and be on the against side, people that we knew were against, but none decided to come. However, if somebody has shown up and is out there now, and if you want to come forward, you can have equal time. You can have just as much time as the other people. If nobody comes forward, we will start the meeting by reading a statement from the against side, because Mary Ann Baldwin, the mayor of Raleigh, who is the main person against this election, did send us a statement. I'll read that statement, and then we'll go into the opening remarks by the people who are for the petition to call the election, and then we'll have questions from the audience. And the main part of what we want to do is to get questions from the audience. So we want these people over here to do their presentation just as quickly as they can so that we can get the audience involved. And so still, if anybody doesn't want to come up here and sit and say that they're against the election, when it comes time to question and answer, hopefully the people who think it is a bad idea to have the election will participate at that time so we can get more balance. This is the statement that we received from Mary Ann Baldwin. During my 12 years of public service and during the course of 6 political campaigns, I have welcomed the opportunity to meet with the residents to discuss the important issues facing Raleigh. In the past year, our city has made great progress on so many fronts: housing affordability and choice, local and regional transit, and issues of equality, for example. And that is what I will continue to remain focused on. A public meeting was held to explain the 7-to-1 vote on why the City Council asked for our election to be moved to November of even-numbered years. And our city attorney has explained all the factors involved in that decision. This will enhance voter participation, give our staff adequate time to redraw districts, and allow the public to weigh in on that effort. The bipartisan study group appointed by the City Council to review term lengths, salary, and improving voter participation also recommended this change. I am willing to have serious dialogue about how we can work together in a positive manner. But since this does not appear to be the intent of the meeting, I therefore respectfully decline. So, we will now have an opening statement by the people who are in favor of the petition to hold an election.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Young. And hello to all of the Wake County Taxpayer Association members here tonight and the guests and friends who are here to be part of this conversation. Thank you for inviting Livable Raleigh here tonight to be part of the program that is discussing a very important issue that not many people are aware of. First up, I would like to give you a few quick points about Livable Raleigh and let you know why we feel it is necessary to recall Mayor Baldwin. Then I will turn the podium over to my 2 colleagues, Mike Lindsay and Tim Niles. Mike will review a list of the mayor's transgressions that have actually led us to this point, and Tim will tell you all about the recall petition campaign and how you can help or get involved. I am Susan Mariama, and I am the chair of Livable Raleigh, and our co-chair is Steph Mendel. We have 15 people on an advisory committee, and we meet weekly. During the past year and a half, we have held several public meetings on a variety of topics, most of which are will be covered this evening. For more in-depth information on any of these issues that you hear about tonight, I would recommend that you go to the Livable Raleigh website and check out the blogs that we have written. Many of them are related directly to the issues that we're speaking to tonight. It's livableraleigh.com. It's pretty easy to get to and pretty thorough. Livable Raleigh is an all-volunteer group of residents that first came together in October of 2019 after the last municipal election. In January 2021, we became a legal entity and became a 501c4 nonprofit organization. This allows us to do many things, including accept donations. To date, we have published over 250 fact-based original blogs about the issues that matter to people in this city. Our mission is to inform and engage the public on the issues that they care about. To that end, we communicate to the public via our website and the blogs that we publish frequently, several times a week. And we also have social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And then we regularly mail our 48,000 mailing list. What has happened to bring us to this point that we would take on an extraordinary challenge and task, such as a recall campaign? Right from the start, this mayor has showed us how she operates, who she is, and who she cares about. She's also shown us what she does not value. We have 20 months of example after example of her preferred method of operating, which is almost exclusively secret backroom deals. This is not an open and transparent administration. We've also seen that she will stop at nothing to give her wealthy developer donors the payback they want, including extending her term for another year to continue helping them overdevelop Raleigh. And while she's at it, she's transferring the tax burden from the development industry to we, the taxpayers. We have personally witnessed or experienced firsthand her disdain for actually engaging the community. Mayor Baldwin does not value interacting with the public and does not value the public's input. Secret governance and eliminating the public input affects all of us because it's a threat to our democracy. This is why we must recall Mayor Baldwin. Thank you.
Hi, this is working? Yeah? Okay. I'm Mike Lindsay, as you already heard. Good evening, folks, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. As a small business owner for 34 years, I really appreciate the Wake County Taxpayers Association advocating for fiscally responsible government. I also share your goals of giving residents a greater voice in local decisions and encouraging more citizens to participate in local public policy making. I'm here tonight because Mayor Baldwin has done the exact opposite of our shared goals. She has wasted taxpayer money. She tried to silence residents by abolishing city support of citizen advisory councils. She wants to give tax breaks for sports facilities and other pet projects. And she has engaged in behind closed door deal making. These actions are the opposite of what all of us consider to be good government practices. So we'll start our presentation. This is a brief history of Mary Ann Baldwin's relentless backroom quest for development money, power, and influence at the expense of Raleigh taxpayers and at the expense of open and transparent democracy. Let's begin with a short video from the days when Raleigh's mayors acted with integrity and rejected massive developer subsidies.
Any action that the city takes is a precedent, and should there be a massive subsidy for one project, all the other developers could come and ask for massive subsidies for their project. It makes no sense at all to the average citizen.
Now let's look at the role big money has come to play in buying Raleigh elections. This chart shows the unprecedented donations given in the 2019 campaigns, more than $320,000 to Baldwin alone, largely from development interest. Baldwin has already raised more than $300,000 for the 2022 election. So the question is, why are developers spending so much money to get Baldwin reelected and reelected? Let's start with two very special developers. The first is Barnhill Contracting. Barnhill Contracting is one of the largest commercial contractors in the Southeast. They benefit directly or indirectly from many of Raleigh's largest development projects. As such, they have a strong interest in their employee, Mayor Mary Ann Baldwin, promoting lucrative development projects approved by the City Council. Even if Mayor Baldwin recuses herself from a vote, she has the ability to cut backroom deals with other councilors to get them to vote for projects that she has an interest in. Next slide. Baldwin's other favorite is John Kane. He and other developers know that Baldwin will greenlight every project and taxpayer subsidy imaginable, including John Kane's Downtown South mega project shown here. Baldwin rushed through a special year-end session to approve Kane's upzoning request while promoting his huge $150 million tax increment grant known as a TID. And this was at taxpayers' expense. Immediately after, City Manager Ruffin Hall quit. So, what is this tax subsidy that Meeker warned us about? Next slide, please. TIGs are designed to spark growth in depressed areas where development would not otherwise happen. But Baldwin has created a TIG policy that has turned Raleigh's budget into what we call a TIGgy bank, giving tax subsidies to any developer who has a friend on council. And just like Meeker predicted, the developers are lining up at the TIGgy bank. Here's Councilor Buffkin's TIG pitch back in April. Next, please.
I have raised a specific opportunity where this TIG might be applied in relation to a pedestrian bridge over 440. It is in our economic opportunity emphasis zone, so we'd be eligible for the 75%. And there are people waiting on us to finish this work. This would never cost the city more than $5 million a year.
Council has put a $5 million per year cap on these developer tax breaks. But how long will that last? Next slide. It turns out TIGs are addictive like crack cocaine, says the mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, excuse me. And in 2018, tax increment grants ate up 12.5% of all of Chicago's property taxes. That means less of your tax dollars going to your parks and neighborhood improvements. That sounds bad, but won't the public raise objections about the influence of development money in council decisions? Well, Baldwin has taken care of that too. Next slide, please. Almost 2 years ago, Baldwin's council sacked Raleigh's 18 citizen advisory councils in a secretly planned vote with no public notice and no public comment. What the council said was that affluent white homeowners have too much CAC power at the expense of others. Of course, this photo doesn't look like that. Baldwin's solution, sack the CACs instead of making them better. 2 years later, Baldwin has spent $72,000 on a consultant and new staff positions at $80,000 a pop, all to suppress community voices. The real reason was Baldwin hated CACs because they negotiated with developers in rezonings for changes that reduced community impacts, and those might have cut into developer profits. So, their latest backroom attack happened on democracy came in a secret June 1st meeting of this year. Next slide. In a secret June 1st meeting with no public notice, Baldwin's council gave themselves an extra year in office and eliminated elections by majority vote. Next slide. With CAC silence, the skids are now greased for council to approve more height and density anywhere in the city without having to listen to tiresome citizen concerns about their neighborhoods and their trees. So, Baldwin is pro-business, right? Let's see how she treated downtown businesses this past June. Next slide. From WRAL, Raleigh Mayor Mary Ann Baldwin announced Friday evening that the city wasn't planning to institute a curfew. There are several protests planned this weekend. I'm not considering the curfew, Baldwin said. With that settled, Baldwin was ready for bed. Next slide, please. The N&O reported Mary Ann Baldwin awakened shortly after midnight, said she couldn't comment on the protest until she was debriefed. At the time, Raleigh police were in riot gear, were still downtown, and store owners were clearing out debris from their vandalized businesses. Here is what one local business owner had to say about Baldwin's performance. Next slide.
Clyde Cooper's Barbecue was supposed to reopen today from the COVID shutdown. The owner tells me she's not ready, doesn't feel protected in this city, and she's shifting her energy now to another cause.
Hell no, I'm not gonna get over it. We were done wrong. This whole town was done wrong.
Clyde Cooper's owner, Debbie Holt, says she was scared for her life when peaceful protests turned violent a couple of weekends ago. She stood inside her restaurant, armed with a gun, trying to protect her small business. She blames top Raleigh leaders for, in her words, allowing the chaos, and is leading the charge, trying to oust them from office.
Somebody has got to be held accountable. Somebody needs to go find another job. I want her to go.
Holt says officers should have stepped in as places were ransacked and fires set inside stores. Apartments and condos are above many of these places.
They did a lot more damage on Sunday night than they did the horrific damage that they did on Saturday night.
Holt having the same fury for the mayor for not putting a curfew in place sooner.
Bless her little heart. I know she wanted that job for a long time, but she flunked the very first test.
Holt tells me she went reaching out to the city council, trying to set up a meeting. She's looking for restored faith that small businesses are valued and will be protected.
This is overwhelming to deal with, and to feel like you were fed and just let them do whatever they want to with your business. That's not right. Hell no, I'm not gonna get over it. We were done wrong. This whole town was done wrong. Hell no, I'm not gonna get over it. We were done wrong. This whole town was done wrong.
Debbie Holt is happy to have you stop by Clyde Cooper's Barbecue for some of her classic barbecue and to sign Livable Raleigh's recall petition. Our last speaker this evening is Tim Niles. He will give an overview of the council's corrupt, self-serving election changes that led Livable Raleigh to launch the recall petition. Tim will briefly describe the petition process and the special election process. After Tim's comments, we'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
First, let me apologize for my casual appearance. I had hip surgery on Sunday. This is the best I can get into. I think it's important that we be, especially with the mayor's opening statement saying that she doesn't consider this a serious conversation. I value my conversation with you. I consider it to be serious. She also said that their reasons for moving the election an additional 8 months were given. They gave 2 reasons for moving it an additional 8 months. The first one was because they wouldn't have enough time to the reason we have to move is because the census data is being delayed. So we can't redraw districts in time for October's election. Every other affected municipality in the state is moving theirs to March. And you can maintain a majority election in March because you can have a runoff. The mayor and council said they wouldn't have enough time to draw the districts for a March election. But had the data come when it was supposed to in April, they would have had the election, redraw the districts, had the election 6 months later in October. It's coming in September, 6 months later is March, right when everybody else is having the election. It's the same 6 month time period. Her other excuse was that they needed more time to prepare for the Parks bond. A Parks bond has nothing to do with the census data. They were supposed to be prepared for a Parks bond in October. I don't know what they're doing. If they're not ready for March, I mean, that was an extra 6 months. So none of they've come up with other excuses since then. They don't make any more sense than the first two. So, for me, there is never a valid reason to delay an election one more day than is necessary. This election could have been scheduled for March of 2022, the same as all the other affected municipalities in the state, and held as a majority election with the possibility of a runoff. Instead, this mayor and council secretly made the choice to delay 8 additional months to November of 2022 in order to force a plurality election on the city and eliminate the requirement for a majority vote. The recall will take about approximately 14,000 signatures from people like yourself who want to protect democracy, stop the backroom deals, and put the election of our representatives back into the hands of the people of Raleigh. What you can do to help us first is to sign the petition here tonight. Excuse me, while you're here. Then become a volunteer yourself to gather the signatures of your family, your friends, and your neighbors. It's easy to do. You follow our instructions and you can't go wrong. We have all the information you need. And now we will start the Q&A portion of the program. And if anybody is already ready to sign, you can go back and start. We'll take signatures now if you're ready, or we'll be happy to take your questions and provide answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, this is a meeting of the Wake County Taxpayers Association and not of Livable Raleigh, so the Livable Raleigh people don't get to say, you know, what's next. So, what's next is if somebody has come who is against having the election, we would like to give you equal time. If no one comes forward, then when we do have the questions and answers in a moment, maybe someone, people who are against having the election can make some points in the form of the question and answer period. At this point, we want to do questions and answers. And so what we're going to do is, I will call upon people. I don't know who many of these people are. Hopefully we will get a balance of people who are on different sides. If you are camera shy, so to speak, and don't like to talk, if you want to write down your question, you can give it to Carol Jones, who's sitting right here in the corner, right here. You can write it down on a piece of paper, and she can hand a piece of paper up here to me, just in case. You know, sometimes people, for various reasons, don't want to stand up and say something. So who has the first question that they want to ask about what's going on? Yes, over here.
How many signatures do you have? Like, how many are there?
She's asking, how many signatures have you accumulated so far?
It's an excellent question. We get it every day. Can you hear me? It's an excellent question, and we get this question every day and at every signing event. We actually just started in earnest with signing events August 15th. We did have a soft launch at Chavis Park on July 17th because we had 150 people and we could get their signatures. We needed the next few weeks to order the merchandise, the signs, the buttons, our banners and so forth. So we started August 15th. We are gonna do a tally at the end of August. But please understand, we don't really have a hard figure yet because of the way we have to run our petition campaign. The rules were written in 1954 and they have not been updated. There's very little technology and digital help that we can use in gathering signatures and accounting for them. So we have people out there just like you who are downloading the petition form from our website and going to their garden club or going to their neighborhood and canvassing themselves. And they are gathering signatures. Now those signatures have to be gathered up by the person who has witnessed them, and then they have to be notarized. Livable Raleigh will be providing notarization for anyone who brings us their petition forms. And also, some people are just printing them off and signing them, printing them off and bringing them to their bank and having it notarized there. So we, being so new at this, we aren't yet seeing too many of the notarizing effort coming back to us. I think this weekend though, we have 3 big events, one at Eliza Pool Park and one at my home, which is a big signing event in the Ridgewood area, and another one in a park in North Raleigh. And once we get through these events, I think we're going to be able to announce that we're well over 1,000. Not too bad for 2 weeks, and not too bad for COVID getting in the way. I think our biggest obstacle will be COVID, because people are still willing to come to outdoor events, which is where all of our signings are really taking place at this point. Except tonight, we're here. So I think that's the best I can do. But we will be tallying all of our signatures at the end of August, and then again at the end of September. And we will announce in between if we meet any more milestones. We're really happy with the response that we've received. We are struck by the fact that people are actually reading our website and following the calendar so they know where events are, and they're traveling from well out of their normal neighborhood to get to a signing event. We had someone from NC State at a Green Road Community Center event this week. He drove all the way just to sign the petition. And so what we're finding is that people are intentionally concerned. They're generally concerned across the board about the direction of the city, and they're traveling to get their signature.
What,
Okay.
sorry, just follow up to that. What are the requirements to sign the petition?
Good question. You need to be a registered voter in Raleigh. And if you aren't a registered voter, at all of our signing events, we have voter registration forms. And our thinking is that if you sign the petition now and give us your registration form, you will be a registered voter by the time we turn in our final signatures. So the biggest qualification is to be a registered voter in Raleigh over the age of 18. You can check very easily. Did you find a yellow door hanger on your seat today? Up in the corner are 2 QR codes. You may not use QR codes that often, but I think once you use them, you'll want to use them again. They're easy. So you just put your phone with a camera right over the QR code, and it will take you to the NC State Board of Elections, where you can look up your own voter registration to see how your name is written. Most people think they know, but then they start to think, gee, did I spell out my middle name, or is it just initial? And one of the things we have to do is have you print your name on the petition exactly as it appears on your voter record. So the first step in signing the petition we'll ask you is, have you checked your voter registration, or are you absolutely certain you know how your name appears on the voter records?
And there's no
Okay,
electronic.
all right, let's move on.
No digital, no, nothing.
I'm going to sort of go to this side of the room and that side of the room back and forth. There's nobody here who is against having the election, and I'm neutral and undecided, but if somebody here against the election were here, something that they might say is, if you've only gotten 1,000 signatures so far in a city this big, you must not have much enthusiasm for your campaign. Back here in the green shirt.
Charles, this question again is for Ms. Mariana. How many signatures must you collect, and when must you have them collected?
So the question is, how many signatures must you collect? And the answer is about 14,000. The second part of the question was, by when must you have them collected? And I'll ask somebody over here to answer that.
There is no date by when we have to have them. The required number of approximately 14,000 is based on, it's 25% of the number of people who voted in the 2019 election. And what happens is, we can take as long as we need to gather the signatures. Once we turn them in, the city clerk's job is to validate them and make sure they are valid voter IDs. And she has 10 days to do that. If she finds something wrong, we have 10 days to make corrections. Once the petition is validated as correct, the city clerk turns it into the Board of Elections. And according to the law, the Board of Elections has to conduct the recall election within 60 days. And that election has to be a full election, meaning there has to be early voting, mail-in voting, and there would also be the possibility of a runoff. So it's all, the timing of when the election would happen is based on when we get enough signatures to turn in, and then it would be 60 to 80 days after that, based on those two 10-day periods that I explained.
Okay, blue shirt way in the back.
My question is not about the recall. My question is there a section or in the city code or in the state law to prevent things like this to happen? Meaning that the incumbent mayor and the incumbent city councils, if they can just postpone it for an election however they want, is there a way we can revise the law to prevent this from happening?
All right, the question was, is there a way that the law can be revised to undo things or prevent the city council from continually postponing things? The reason the election is going to be in 2022 and in an even number of years is because the city council persuaded the legislature to enact a local bill. So it would take an act of the legislature to undo it or to extend it further. So that's the answer. It wasn't unilateral by the city council. The city council got it put into a local bill. Right here, near the front.
Well, you said that it's a quarter of the, how many people voted, but it doesn't matter if you voted in
No,
the
that just,
or not.
correct. That just gives you the number you need. The people who signed the petition don't have to have actually voted in 2019. That's just the calculation. And to follow up on his question about the state, there is no recall law in the state of North Carolina. Some cities have recall laws, some cities do not. Lucky for us, Raleigh has one. It just happens to be older in the hills. And no, you cannot do anything electronically. Everything has to be done and witnessed by a human being. And then the human being who witnessed all the people signing on their page has to take that page to a notary and notarize and have their signature notarized that they witnessed these people signing this paper. And those people are who they, to the best of their knowledge, are who they purported to be.
Okay, now I'm not going to get back to you until the very end because you've already gone. Yes, here.
I'm fairly new to the process of local elections, so this might be a naive question, but is there any way that organizers of efforts to get signatures on these petitions can get hold of the data of the people who have voted in past elections, number one, and number two, is there a common contact that they would go through on Livable Raleigh to coordinate their signature gathering efforts?
All right, on the first part of the question is, can people find out who voted in the last election? And the answer to that is yes, that is publicly available information. Any citizen can get that from the elections board. And for the second part of your question, we'll have to ask somebody from Livable Raleigh.
So on Livable Raleigh's website, there's all the information you need to know about the recall process. You can download the forms and the instructions. There is an instruction form for if you want to gather other people's signatures. There is the petition form itself, where they print and sign their name. There is a third form, which is the notary form, because any signatures you gather, you're gonna take that notary form and then take your entire stack and go get notarized.
So you don't have to coordinate with anyone, or is there any provision for doing a collaborative effort?
I don't know, we have no idea how many people are out there downloading and doing their own neighborhood canvassing. When they get done and have their documentation notarized, they mail it to our post office box. If they have trouble finding a notary, if their bank doesn't provide one, and they get in touch with us, we have an email address, we have a phone number, we have a post office box. If they get in touch with us, we have some volunteer notaries that we can help you get notarized. And so, as far as how many signatures we have to date, and whether 1,000 means we're doing good or we're not doing anything at all, we have no idea how many people. There could be 3,000 out there already from individuals who have taken it upon themselves to download the forms and start gathering signatures. And we also assume that once summer is over, kids are back in school, people are done with vacations, it will really start to take off. Especially the more signs you put out in your yards to people, so they see what's going on.
Over here in the blue shirt in the back.
Yeah, along the same lines of the number of signatures that you're looking to get, 14,000 is the number, but we've seen recently in places like California where there's a significant attempt to invalidate signatures. So what is the target that you want to achieve so that you end up with the required amount and a cushion?
Right, so our original thoughts were to target 20,000, so we'd have 14,000 valid ones. We assume that the city clerk and or the city processes will do everything they can to invalidate as many of them as possible.
Okay, we'll go back to this side, and remember, anybody who wants to make a point against having this election, against the petition, you're certainly welcome here in the black top. Yeah, you.
So it's really scary that a lot of us didn't know like any of this going on. So what is it that Livable Raleigh can do, or you think you guys can do to, besides, I know you guys are doing some events, but how can you outreach more, especially to my age group, the 30 to 40, and what can I do to help? Because it's personal, it's personal, so I will do whatever I
When you go to the table in the back, after you have signed the petition, there's a document back there where you can sign up to volunteer and become part of the effort.
Perfect, all right.
And then we want you to tell everyone you know in your age group about this, explain it to them, point them to our website. As I said, all of the information, the case for the recall is all there. Everything you heard about here tonight plus more is on our website. Anybody can access it.
Okay, over on this side on the aisle. Yeah.
The person who, what's happening notary-wise, the person who gathered those signatures is the one who's being notarized. So if I'm out gathering signatures, and I may have gathered, 500 signatures on multiple pages, and I have to, in front of the notary, sign the bottom of each page, attesting to the fact that I witnessed all of these people write their name in, and to the best of my knowledge, these people are who they say they are. So it's the gatherer who's being notarized, not the signatures.
Okay, back on the other side, the lady in the purple, you've had your hand up for a long time.
I'm sorry, I was just agreeing with him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Most
Right,
people
so
do.
It's like when you have an auction, you need to keep your hand on the lamp. If you raise your hand during an auction, you might accidentally buy something. Standing in the back.
Yes, you answered the question with regard to time frame. My question is, what is the cost to us taxpayers to have the Board of Elections run this election?
I don't know a specific cost. I have heard that an election in general costs about $800,000, and you may lay that $800,000 bill at the feet of Mary Ann Baldwin for moving it from March to November, when she had all the time in the world to do it in March like every other city. And if she wants to change it back to March now, we'll stop.
Right here in the very middle on this side.
I want to know, have you touched all sections of Raleigh? Have you, I know you said you were at Chavis Park, that's in southeast Raleigh. Have you did North Raleigh, West Raleigh, everything? How about, income groups? Are you looking at everybody that makes $25,000 a year plus $75,000 plus $200,000 a year?
We're not looking at people demographically. We're looking at people, well, we're trying to hold events throughout the city in various locations. If there are neighbors, if there are neighborhoods or individuals who want to hold an event and want us to co-host with them, we're happy to come to your neighborhood and do an event. If you have, I mean, we will go to one individual's house for them to sign the document. It's far more productive for us if you have lots of friends and neighbors who also want to sign, to then, come to an event in your area and just gather them all at once. So we're not doing any kind of demographic data. We're just going anywhere that we can get signatures.
Okay, the other woman in the very middle.
Say that again?
If we have an election in 2021,
Yeah.
at 800,000?
Yeah, there's not gonna be one in 2020.
Right, but if it was, if she hadn't moved it, for instance,
Yes,
would we be paying that 800,000?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, if the election was in this fall in 2021, it would have cost $800,000.
Okay, so on that, the county elections board, if the petition is successful, has to call an election. It would be possible to call that election to coincide with next year's primary or next year's runoff primary, in which case the 800,000 is already spent. Now over here, yes, in the purple in the middle. Yes. Maroon. Well, I don't know the difference between purple and maroon.
I know she asked about signing up to, Austin Jenny asked about signing up to volunteer with you all and kind of help these efforts. But my question kind of lends itself towards, is your organization the only one that can have signing events? And how do you, if you want to launch a signing event under another, let's say, organization and wants to partner with you, what are the steps to do that?
If you have an organization or other organizations who would like to partner with us, we would love for them to get in touch with us. Anybody can help. What they can't do is start their own separate set of documents and try, because then it would just be us competing against each other. Use our documents and work with us. We would love to partner with as many groups as possible.
Okay. Over on our side, this side, in the back, is that red? Somebody says it's burgundy.
Thank you, folks, for the work you've done. I was very upset when CAC meetings were quit, they stopped them. And the way they treated the business people downstairs is just unthinkable. Downtown is unthinkable. Given the fact that you're going to be perfectly successful, everything you want to do is just going to fall in place. Speak to me gonna replace her, because it seems to me it's just another person just like her in another pair of shoes.
Yeah.
I just don't know, I'm sitting down thinking.
All right, so that last question was about if the petition is successful, who else would be running for mayor? And we'll let the people over here give their response to that. But let me just point out, we got two issues here. One is whether or not there should be an election. And then if there is an election, it's for whom should you vote? And anybody who wishes to run can run. And somebody logically could very well be in favor of having the election, but then vote for all of the incumbents once it's time to vote. Those are two separate things, but okay, do you all have a response?
I think the question, you were wondering who may run or who is going to run. We already have one mayor candidate who has announced. It's Terrence Ruth, who teaches at NC State. He's a relatively young African-American guy with a wife and a cute little boy, and a really great person. And I believe he's incredibly honest. And but again, I mean, if this goes through, we're obviously going to probably get other people considering running. And right now, I don't know who that would be. All I know about is Terrence Ruth. I'm sorry?
Okay, who else has a?
I'll support anyone who doesn't work for a university to
Who else has a question? In the red on the front row.
Curious, is there any kind of group or demographic that is not for this that you have spoken with or heard from other than outside the mayor's office?
You mean developers? Yeah, they're not for it. They're paying big bucks. I mean, I would be happy to give Mary Ann Baldwin $5,600 contribution for the next election if I knew I was in the pie of $5.1 million every year in perpetuity. I'd give her $5,600 to run again. Wouldn't you? No, no, there's no specific demographic. Well, but I need to clarify one thing to make sure we're all understanding. This is a recall of Mary Ann Baldwin only, not the entire council. If we are successful with our 14,000 signatures, it is the mayor and only the mayor who will stand for election. The rest of the council will still be in place until November 2022. Okay? And anybody can sign, if there's a recall, there can be 25 candidates to replace her. It will be her and whoever else wants to run. The one benefit is in this recall, you have to have a majority. There's no plurality crap like they're trying to pull in November. So you will have to get over 50% of the vote, or there will be a runoff on the top too.
All right, so I'm neutral and undecided on this, but since there's no one here who seems to be willing to come forward on the other side, I'm going to make a couple of points that could be made by someone who is against the petition and the recall. And you ask over here, is there some demographic that's against the recall? If somebody were here representing the other side, they might say, well, how about all those people in the last election who voted in Mary Ann Baldwin? She did win the last election. If you will recall, she had 38%, came in first. The next person had 31%. The next person had 20%. So that would be one answer you could give. I sort of forgot what my other point was, but I'm going to remember it in a minute, and I'll make it.
While you're thinking about that point, I will note that this time, if she only gets 38%, she'll win. She doesn't have to worry about the possibility of a runoff.
All right, well, on that, if there were somebody here who is against the petition, something they might say is this. I went back 20 years and looked at 10 elections. So over the last 10 elections, 20 years, a total of 80 people have been elected to the city council. There are 8 slots up every year. Many times people run unopposed. But many of these elections, there was more than one person. There were 11 occasions when somebody could have called a runoff. There were 6 occasions when somebody did call a runoff. There were 2 occasions where the loser, the first time around, ended up winning. So the second place person came in first. So if somebody were here against the election, a point that they could make is that people usually there's no need for a runoff. If there is a possibility of a runoff, often the people who could call a runoff do not. And the result ends up the same except in all of 2 cases. And another thing that they could point out is that last election in 2019, there were 2 candidates who could have been run off. However, the runner-up person in both cases did not ask for a runoff. So if somebody were here against the petition, they could say, how come you didn't do anything 2 years ago? Wasn't that the right time to do it? But you didn't do it, and you could criticize those 2 people for not calling the election back then. Standing up here in the back.
Yes, comment, question in opposition, just to be devil's advocate. Based on the timeline as you presented it, you had an open deadline or no deadline to gather the required signatures. Then there's approximately 20 days. The clerk's office has the 10 days as you explained. And then should there be irregularities with any of those signatures, you have 10 days to resolve those irregularities. So we're already at 20 days. We can consider that in calendar days, a month, considering working days. Subsequently, upon presentation to the Board of Elections, they have 60 days to then do the runoff election. Best case scenario, we're looking at a March or April timeframe to have this election. And that's being optimistic. Why should we incur the expense and the challenge, and why should we put someone in for merely 6 months in front of a scheduled November election in 22?
So for me, I don't like the precedent that is set by allowing this mayor to do what she has done, including eliminating future runoff possibilities, even though it has only mattered twice in the past, as he has said. That's still twice, and it won't matter in the future. And she didn't need to do the power grab she did. I don't want to set the precedent and let her get away with it. Who knows what she'll do next?
Okay. So aside from the obvious political component of your efforts in attempting to, if you will, dirty up Mayor Baldwin for your preferred candidate, so it appears, explain to us why we should support this.
Did we dirty up Mayor Baldwin, or did she dirty up the city
Yes.
herself?
Who was next?
So, the greatest concern to me is not whether we move to a plurality form of election, because I think someday we'll be going to ranked choice voting anyway, and this is just a step in that direction. But what I really care about is the fact that this mayor has done all these backroom deals. She's tried to suppress all the citizens' input in government. She's doing all these backroom deals with her development buddies. She has gone into a secret meeting and changed the election without asking any of us whether we think that's a good idea or not. Those are all the reasons why we should not just sit back and say, well, okay, we didn't really like that, but what the heck, let's just let it ride and see what happens. That's not where I come from.
All right, so remember, I'm undecided and I'm neutral. No, you may not, because you've already spoken a few times and we're trying to get to some other people. In order to try to give some balance to this, as a lawyer for about 40 years, I try to learn how to argue both sides of the case. An old joke is if you have two lawyers in a room, they will have at least 3 opinions on something. So if somebody were here who was really against this recall effort, one of the points that they could make is that, it's really disingenuous to talk about how the new system for electing the city council and the mayor is not good because of the plurality aspect and moving to the even numbered years. Because if in principle those were bad things, you would be trying to recall the whole city council. It wasn't just the mayor, it was the whole city council who was in on this. So that's something that could be said by somebody who is against the petition. And it's important to try to make points against it. And so that's why I'm jumping in with some things, because nobody else is. Yes?
Exactly how does the Raleigh City Council have enough pull in the legislature to get this bill done in the first place?
I wasn't in the secret meeting.
That's $1 million question, and we don't know the answer to that, but again, done behind closed doors.
We can absolutely afford to recall the entire city council, because there were members of the city council who were elected to represent us, and they were protesting downtown with the kids, and they were ripping down statues. I live downtown. They tried to set the building I was lived in on fire. So that was a part of our city council. So you were elected to a position where you had the power, if those statues were really that offensive, to take them down. And instead, they partook in activities that put themselves at risk and other members of the community. So what are they even using their office for? What use are they if they just keep doing stuff by their own rules anyways, as far as what they do independently and then what they do with their office?
So
they're completely siloed.
So what I'll say is, if you go to our website, you can see that we find many transgressions by many city councilors that are not in the neighborhood's interest, not in our environment's interest, not in the interest of things related to equity and social justice, okay? But what we said was, okay, the way the petition rules are written, we'd have to do a separate petition for all of them. And so instead of me coming to you with one petition to sign, we'd have to come to you with a stack of petitions. So we said,
that was more of a rhetoric statement, just because that statement, if somebody was fighting this movement and that was the argument that they used, I would say, like, I'm not afraid to do that either, but let's focus on the mayor right now.
right. Yeah, we can get the message out.
Way back in the very back on the last row.
Hi, thank you for your presentation, and, I think besides the recall, Baldwin should be all but recalled. But I feel like there's a more insidious problem here than just the recall, and when you were talking about the public law that was passed, that laid the foundation for moving, the election, that seems like very problematic, and I just wonder if you could speak to that public law. Was it just a limited geographic area of Raleigh, and then as a 501c4, what work are you all doing to change that public law so that we can make sure that things like this don't happen in the future?
So I am assuming when you say the public law, you're talking about the amendment that the General Assembly added to. The General Assembly put together a bill that would move all the elections to March of 2022. Raleigh asked them for an amendment to move theirs and theirs alone to November of 2022. So there is a special amendment that deals with Raleigh and Raleigh alone that moves Raleigh instead of to March to November.
Okay, so that was the General Assembly.
Yes.
That did that.
But it was at the request of Raleigh. I mean, Raleigh, they didn't think of it on their own. Raleigh.
Right. But Raleigh, Lake County, the General Assembly is majority Republican, so I find it very surprising that, the Speaker of the House and Senate President would say, okay, Raleigh, Democrats are going to do what you want. That's a whole other.
Right, and I'm going to let someone else speak to this, but I've got one thing to add to the previous point, where we originally considered recalling all 8 members of City Council, but as Russ said, based on the archaic rules. You can't do that with one petition. It's a petition from each member of council. We decided that would be way more than we could possibly accomplish. Mayor Baldwin is the architect of this power grab. We decided to recall her, but we will continue to keep the other 7 of them and hold them accountable. We won't, when November 2022 comes around, we won't forget their part in all of this, and it will be front and center in the next election.
And maybe we can slide order so you can point me to that public law, because I'd like to do a little research on that as well.
Okay, well, now we're over on this side. Yes, sir, Whitehair.
Could you, give us the specifics of the bridge, of some of the difference between the plurality vote and majority?
Yes, so the question is, what's the difference between a plurality vote and a majority vote? And I will explain that. The plurality vote is another word for it is first past the post. So in the last election for mayor, there were 6 people running. The person who came in first was Mary Ann Baldwin with 38%. Second person had 31, the next one had 20, and then there were some others. When you have a plurality system, it's whoever gets the most votes wins. So 38% automatically wins. The way that Raleigh did its elections until they changed it this year was, if nobody gets a majority, then the person who came in second can call for a runoff. And then obviously in a runoff, there are only 2, so it's, it has to be a majority in the runoff. If the person who came in second does not call for a runoff, then whoever got the plurality wins. So plurality just means you got the most votes. So let's say 10 people run for mayor. One gets 11%. That person wins in a plurality system. Over here. Well, no, actually, I'm sorry. You've asked a couple questions. This guy has not asked any. Well, let's get him first.
I'm going to try to play devil's advocate too here, since there's nobody here representing the other side. And I want to remind everybody, as we said, the mayor and the council were invited to be here. For a mayor who said she talks to residents, she doesn't. Why isn't she here? Right. When you go to a council meeting, she allows people to speak, depending on the number of people that can speak. 2 minutes, if you're lucky, sometimes 1 minute, and your microphone's then shut off. She can respond to you, but you can't respond back to her. That is not communication. There was a lot of discussion about cost. The election is going to happen anyway. It's just a question of time. So I wouldn't be concerned about cost. But the other side of it is, they gave themselves an extra, depending on how you look at it, a year or 6 months, depending on how you count your months, of staying in office that they're not elected for. And if you're going to have a recall, that's what you should be calling them back on. They're not elected by the people. They are elected by the decision that they made to stay in office. And I'll just let it go with that.
All right, well, on that, I'm neutral and undecided. If there was somebody who was against the election, something that they could say, possibly, and retort to that, is we were elected to a 2-year term, that's true, and now it's 3. But the first year of our term got discombobulated because of riots and the flu. So, by extending it, we're really just having 2 years to enact our agenda. So that's something that...
You're a good leader except for when it comes to a crisis.
That's something that, somebody could point out about a justification for making the term extend by an extra year. And remember, I'm undecided and neutral, but I'm trying to
You don't sound very undecided and neutral.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there wasn't a minute that Mayor Baldwin and her majority on the council weren't getting done what they wanted to get done. You may say there were riots and there was COVID. You don't get a do-over just because you didn't finish your parks bond in time.
All right, there's now been enough time since your other questions that I will come back to you. Yeah, I know.
It's not so much, it's a statement and then a question. So I think a great place to start with tables is downtown Raleigh, because I own a business downtown and it looks like a war zone still today. Also, when Marion Ball was shut down, well, when actually like the whole state was shut down, but every bar was shut down, every bar should say, yes, you can set up in front of me. Because in July of 2020, she allowed a crooked bar to open in Raleigh while bars were closed. So that's a good place to start. She's fake, crooked, and she's just like all the other liberal.
I'm in the medical profession, professional. I consult practices. I've ran surgery centers. I'm very familiar with a lot of protocol, especially things that we're following for this. And I sent every single member of my city council several times a presentation on the efficacy or lack thereof of masking. Not one time did anyone reach out to me. So that just shows that they don't listen to people and the professionals in this community.
All right, so, we're, a whole lot of people have had questions and we're sort of winding this down now, but Ed, what's your question?
Charles, I would like to remind people, you read the response from the mayor earlier.
Yeah.
But I'd like for people to know that we invited the mayor not one time, but I wrote personally from Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I was last week. I wrote her a second invitation. I didn't beg her to come to this meeting, but I strongly suggested that she reconsider her decision not to attend. And as of this afternoon, we have not heard any word from the mayor. So the mayor has given more than ample opportunity to be here to defend her position and herself in this discussion. We just want you to know that she had a lot of invitation possibilities, and so we weren't trying to keep her from being here to defend herself, but she just did not respond to it. And of course,
Okay, so I see you over here, but, oh, I'm sorry, Ed. I see you over here, but first I want to say that if there's someone here who wants to make a statement against having this recall election, I want to call on you next, because I don't want to be the only person who's trying to make points the other way. Okay, I don't see anybody. Yes, over here in the cab.
2 quick points. One is, if this recall effort is successful, and I clearly think it will be, it will put the fear of God in the rest of the council. Because they will know that it can be done and they're next if they continue the existing practice. So I think in that respect, it's working, and I hope we can make it happen. The other thing is, as far as the mayor not being here, I'm sure she has a very busy schedule. She couldn't come, probably, just like when she couldn't come curfew the second night.
All right. Does anybody else, right now I'm looking for somebody. We've had a lot of people making comments in favor of the election. Nobody seems to want to make a comment against. I'm looking to see if there's an actual bona fide question as opposed to a.
Is it okay if I'm not a resident of Raleigh?
Yes.
Okay. I also think about the money, I know we don't wanna let her get away with something, but I don't know what, other than that, I don't know what real tangible outcomes we would get by recalling her.
It's worth it. It's worth it, make a point.
Okay, way in the back, standing up.
Hi. Okay. Just a quick question. So, okay, Mayor Baldwin gets recalled. Maybe this gentleman, Terrence Ruth, is filling that position, right? Does anybody know anything about Terrence Ruth?
No, what about
Yeah. Right. So, okay, some of his things that he has been a part of to publish. right? One of them is the goal of each tool should be to place the power in the hands of individuals familiar with welfare problems and solutions. Okay? The role of social work in integrating mental health students in traditional school settings, community care approach. Okay? Ethics of disenfranchisement and voting rights in the United States, convicted felons, the homelessness, and immigrants.
What's his name?
I'm looking him up right now.
We need someone
So my question is, Baldwin proves to be maybe incapable, but is it worth putting someone in her place who is proven to be pro-social agenda for the sake of replacing someone who's incapable?
So the answer to your question is that we
Well, he was
don't.
the only name brought up.
No, hang on. The answer to your question is we don't make a decision on whether to do a recall based on who has already announced as a candidate. Anybody, you can run. You want to?
I may already be spoken for.
So, but I'm saying, so we have no idea how many people are going to run, how many different people of different political ideologies may run. So I wouldn't want to decide, I wouldn't want to challenge someone to decide whether a recall is good or bad or warranted or not based on the only one candidate who happens to have announced today.
There's also another dynamic, Milo Austin, and I don't know if you all are aware, but when I Googled, when I first heard about the recall, nothing comes up on Liberal Raleigh. I couldn't find anything on the petition. The only thing that I found was an electronic petition that Milo started, asking for 1,500 signatures, and he's at 1,370 as we speak. So do we know that he's running this petition online, and it's even allowed to, but he's
A petition for what?
to recall the mayor.
No, you can't run it online, it's illegal. Well, he can do what he wants to.
And he's also, but he's on ballot token that he's running for mayor with terms.
Okay, I'm trying to sort of wrap this up, and I'm looking for a question which is non-repetitious. Yes, here on the aisle.
I just want to point out that this is not about who runs for mayor or not. We could care less. The only thing we want to do is get rid of a mayor that has really screwed this city up. I've been here since 76, okay, and this is the worst thing I have ever seen happen. We've had a lot of ups and downs, and some of you, the old timers like me, can discuss that over a beer somewhere. But the problem is that this is really bad because what has not been said tonight, okay, is that if we get rid of Mary Ann Baldwin, all the mayor has is one vote on the city council, and you've got these other 7 people hanging out here that aren't so hot either. So we got one other person that is like okay. So you really have to think this through. And if we don't get this done, and I'm really glad that the Taxpayers Association picked it up because obviously the political parties haven't got much of an interest. Okay, we really need to get this done. Like I've been on the CAC chairs and all kinds of stuff like that, and on the Parks Board and everything else for those of you that know me. And I'm telling you right now, this is really bad. They got this city screwed up. They really did.
Okay, now, does this lady over here have a question still? Yeah, you. Okay, it was already answered. So I'm trying to wrap things, does somebody, I want you to tell the truth. You can put up your hand if you have something that hasn't already been said or brought up. Yes.
Okay, my question is back to the plurality. Was that a specific request in the bill, or is it just a plurality because it moved the election? I kind of had the idea.
It is something that is specifically in the law now. There is no more runoff election. So.
It's not just because it was moved.
Well, right. It is because it was moved to November. You can have your election in an even year and do a primary in March, get yourself winnowed down to your 2 candidates, then have your general election in November.
Right.
So then you don't need a runoff. There's only 2 candidates. Someone's going to get over 50%. In this particular case, It is not illegal in the state of North Carolina to have a runoff after a November election. It's just technically impossible schedule-wise, the way the laws are and how we have to schedule elections. So if you have a November election without a primary, you only can have a plurality election.
There's a lady in a floral in the very last row.
That's me.
That's you, yeah.
Hi, my name is Beth Owen, and I had Steph Mendel come to my home. I was having a precinct meeting for my precinct 1102 GOP, and Steph came to my home, and I just want to, the gentleman here said no political parties are picking it up. This is our community, and this is where we get to reach across the aisle. Democrats and Republicans, who cares? We're Raleigheites. We're the community who loves each other, really. We saw our community devastated last year. People haven't spoken out because they're afraid. They don't want to cross people. This is an opportunity for all of us to work together. And when Steph came to my home, I had 20 diehard Republicans there, but we all care about Raleigh. Steph couldn't have been more gracious. She was a council member who stood up for our neighborhood when we came in before the council, and we lobbied to get rid of a 6-story building at Edwards Mill across from Laurel Hills. She made the difference. She listened. We were a community that came forward to the council. We're not being listened to anymore. Across the board. And if it takes out Baldwin, it's worth it.
Yes.
Because it says to the rest of them, you're on notice. And then anybody who was running again and was on her city council, they have a black mark because they're attached to her. So thank you for what you're doing, and I just want to say everybody ought to have things in their home, they ought to talk to their neighbors, and they ought to say, sign this, we're in this together. This is not a Republican issue, this is not a Democrat issue. This is a mayor issue, and it's saving our city.
All right. I want to thank you very much for your comment. We all need to remember the Raleigh City Council is a nonpartisan council. It is a nonpartisan election. And this is a bipartisan issue. And just as you said, these are local issues. They're not Democrat or Republican issues. And thank you for having a serious conversation and bringing up a serious issue, even if Mary Ann Baldwin said we weren't going to be having a serious conversation tonight.
I'm going to wrap things up now. All the people who have their hands up have said something before, and I only want to take it if you're going to make a point against having the recall election. If you're going to make a point against, I'll take it for balance. Otherwise, no more questions. And you're promising you're going to be making a point. All right.
Run again.
She will automatically be on the ballot if there's a recall. It will be her and anybody else who runs.
But that's not.
She's talking about 2024.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
not like the governor, where you can run 4 years or 8
There's
years.
no term limits on Raleigh City
All right.
Council.
Did another person over here, now, remember you're promising, you're making a point against the recall.
I'm going to ask you a question and you can ascertain whether it's for or against. For clarification, I've not heard in this forum tonight the legislation that our General Assembly passed to move the election to November 22. Is that currently a once and done, or does that legislation permanently move that, and does it permanently make it a 2-year or 4-year term?
I can answer that. It's permanent until it's changed.
Right.
And everything is still a 2-year term. The election's in November rather than October with a runoff like it was until a few months ago. So it can be changed, but it would take an act of the legislature to change it. Okay, so yes, I saw your hand go up when I was saying
True
anybody
opposition,
against the
true
recall.
opposition.
So
True opposition.
yes, I'm gonna call on you.
Right, thank you very much. I have friends who are in New York State, and they all celebrated when Cuomo handed him his resignation, and then his predecessor stepped in, and now they are all absolutely beside themselves because she is more of a tyrant, more of a socialist than Cuomo. It's true. It's true. We're people with children in school, right? So, and our children are being treated the way that they're treated. We are all taxpayers. That tax money is spent in different ways. And I just caution everyone, when I first saw the sign, I was like, you know what, this makes really great sense. I think a short-term agenda that harms you long-term is something that we should all take with caution. That's my point.
All right, thank you. So on that note, we're going to wrap things up. We'll have that, last note being against the recall. That helps with some balance, having that side have the last word. Now, bear in mind the Wake County Taxpayers Association is neutral on this point. We just had this forum so that people could express their views. We're not for it and we're not against it. I personally am undecided on it. And if I made some points against it that are not the strongest points that somebody else would have made, well, you weren't here, so I was just trying to, on the fly, I could come up with some things, and we're just doing the best that we can so that there will be balance. Now, the next meeting of the Taxpayers Association will be Thursday, September the 30th. That's the last Thursday in September. So this is the last Thursday in August, so it's at the normal time. We don't know where it will be. It might not necessarily be here at the McCrimmon Center. And we don't know what the program is going to be, right, Ed? You don't know what the program is yet? Okay, so the program has not been set, but you can follow the Wake County Taxpayers Association on Facebook, and you'll get a notice as to what the program is going to be and where the meeting's going to be. Or if you're on the email list, and if you're not, you could have signed up tonight to be on the email list. You'll be getting an email with that update.
Did you say
So,
September 30th?
September the 30th,
14,000 signatures right now.
which is a Thursday, September the 30th, will be the next meeting. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming here tonight and having some great questions. And so we will adjourn this meeting. Yes, Ed. You registered? Yes. And the president of the Taxpayers Association, Ed Jones, is going to come up here and make a closing statement.
What I'm saying, register to vote. You have to register to vote.
I'd like for us to give Charles Gillum a hand for conducting a very good meeting. Doing a good job as moderator. You heard me read the purpose of our Taxpayers Association at the beginning, and I would just like to add, with all the discussion, and we've had some, I think, very good discussion here, even though it has been a little bit one-sided because of the absence of the other side of the issue. But I'd just like you to keep in mind that we are a tax concern organization. And you heard me read about the concerns we have and the way that we're concerned about wasteful spending and unnecessary spending, this type of thing. Keep in mind that under this mayor and under this city council, the chances are very strong, based on some conversations that I've had with several people, that the citizens of Raleigh, in the years to come, if this council is not changed and the attitudes are not changed, you are going to be, as a citizen of Raleigh and the surrounding area, you're going to be hit with some very, very high taxes and high tax increases, which I can tell you as a taxpayer association, we are going to fight hard against. They've got this Dix Hill Park, and it is a beautiful place over there. But you've probably heard that there is going to be an effort to spend hundreds of millions of additional dollars on that park. Now, who's going to pay for that? You and I. Keep in mind, as you look to the future, not only with the mayor, but this council, that unless attitudes change, we're going to be looking at some very, very bad spending policies in the future. And again, we thank you for being here, we thank you for participating, and we certainly thank all the panelists for their good job. Appreciate it. I hope to see you again at one of our future meetings.